Hello, folks. I'm David, and this is From the Hip podcast, and we're filming, as always, at the beautiful Say What podcast studios. And I've got a studio owner, photographer, new to the area, lady with me today. And Courtney, introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney. I am a wife and a mother of 4. I'm also a previous studio owner and a photographer, and I've been in the photography industry for about 10 years. So it's been amazing just to see everything evolve. And at my core, I am just a woman who is just resilient and loves to explore and to create. I've always been a creator, and that's who I am. That's me.
Now, we're going to seem like we know one another, and I'm going to come clean with the audience. We did a 30-minute podcast and had some equipment issues that popped up. So we're redoing this segment. And so, Courtney, we'll start again. Tell us about your studio. Where was it? How long did you have it? And what caused you to open one?
Amazing question. My studio was named Blanc Studio One. We just recently closed in September of this year. However, I started the studio in the middle of the pandemic, and it was a doozy. It was very interesting to start studio owning in the middle of the pandemic, but it was open in operation from 2020 until 2024, and it was such an amazing opportunity to learn and to also, like you mentioned prior, seeing other people and their perspective and what they're able to create within the studio. I loved that about studio owning. It was in Wichita Falls, Texas, my hometown where I was born and raised. Small town to me, and I'm new to the big city, but I'm loving it so far. And all the things that I learned from studio owning, honestly, I could apply to my everyday life, and that's how much I actually love owning the studio. And being a photographer is everything. It's just so applicable to this journey of life that we're all on.
Well, owning a studio, one, it teaches you economics and business and return on investment.
Yeah.
But you get to know people. And if you're an introvert, hopefully you will turn into an extrovert because you deal with a lot of different people, a lot of different personalities, and a lot of different talent levels. I'm sure as an owner you've had to help people. They could turn their camera on, but that was about it. Have you had that experience?
I have. Every Christmas, we invited the whole community, like photographers, moms with cameras, gramtographers, the grandmas who have the cameras, and we would invite them to the studio to use our Christmas setup. And so I noticed there when I would be there helping everybody like get into the studio and make sure that they're out at their allotted time, that there are people that were like, oh, this camera, like I just got it and I haven't opened it. I got it as a early Christmas present or a Black Friday gift. And so I definitely resonate with having to be skilled in speaking with people and honestly translating all this knowledge that you might have about a camera and making it simplified and quick too, because in studio sometimes you're on a tight time schedule.
Yes, they are. And, excuse me, especially studio lighting. A lot of people don't know the first thing about it.
No.
So you had the studio for 4 years.
Yes.
Now I remember seeing pictures because I met Courtney online. She had a studio question, or I asked her about her studio or something. And she spent a lot of hours up there.
A lot of hours.
With her kids.
Yes, and that was, it was a growing moment. And I actually remember, so I had bought a clawfoot bathtub, and I did not know if I was going to be able to put water in there, because I had rented a studio office suite, like just an office suite with no restroom in there. And so a little bit more about the studio. The first studio space I acquired was actually in a 100-year-old building in the middle of downtown, beautiful and optimal for lighting, but the elevators were also 100 years old, and sometimes they did not work. So I had lots of questions, and we ended up meeting online because of one of the questions that I had pertaining to being a studio owner. But taking the kiddos up there, sometimes the elevator's not working, sometimes, it was just a small space. The heater might have went out. We might have to be up there with our blankets and breaking up all the fights. It was a different kind of journey. But I found that in that journey, resilience just began to grow. And being a studio owner, I had to learn to just keep going. And it might be hard, and I might be taking all the babies up there, 3 of them up to the studio, but I had to learn to navigate that, buying a little fridge, bringing toys, and of course, learning about the carpet and what was under the carpet whenever you get a studio space. It was a lot of learning, but it was needed, and I'm grateful for it.
Now, you said a clawfoot tub. Was that one of the cast iron tubs?
Yes. Yes.
Heavy suckers, aren't they?
Very heavy. And I learned that I had some muscles that they may not show, but they're there. I also learned how to get the wheels as well to put the tub on, because I had to move it in order to paint, and of course move it in the studio. It was different, but it was beautiful.
Well, cast iron tubs are heavy, and we have a clawfoot tub in the studio. Mm-hmm. But ours is plastic, so to speak.
What?
Yes.
I didn't even know that.
You can't tell it by looking at it.
No. So it's not as heavy as...
Oh, no, it doesn't weigh but maybe 60 pounds.
Wow. You guys, I had no clue.
It's acrylic.
I'm like 110 pounds struggling to move this cast iron, because sometimes people would come and they would move it, and I have to move it back. They would rent the studio and they would move it wherever they wanted, and they wouldn't put it back. And I would come in there with my kids and I'd be like, okay, I've got to find the muscles somewhere. And I had to make that happen, but I would have never known looking at yours.
No, nobody would.
Mm-mm.
And story on that tub, I was in a thrift store over in Arlington, been 18 years ago, and there was this tub. And I thought, man, how'd they get that in here? And I picked up on it just to see how heavy it was. I just picked it up with one hand. And I looked at the price, and it was $65.
That's a good price.
And sold right then.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What a great investment, because now it's serving you for years.
I've had it for 18 years.
Wow. And it doesn't look like it either. I love that just walking through your studio, I could tell that you take such good care of everything that's in the studio.
I have help to do that.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, because we got a lot in there.
There is. And studio owning is no joke. Like, inventory-wise, making sure that things aren't broken. Because sometimes people rent the studio, and if someone breaks a prop in between, they come back expecting that prop, but then having to update social medias or let people down and say, I'm sorry, we don't have that right now, especially if they're antiques. That's hard.
Did you ever have the experience where you came in and something was broken and no one knew how it broke?
Well, I had cameras, so I could kind of pinpoint what happened. But, one thing I can remember for certain is the backdrop wall. So I had one on chains. I didn't have one as fancy as yours. But I was actually in the hospital for a prolonged time, and I wasn't able to actually go and service the studio. This was in 2021. And someone continuously kept breaking the chains. I know that they're not always going to be, on on the gears perfectly.
Right.
But that is the one thing that I ended up, when I moved to a new studio space, I didn't bring the mounted system with me because I thought, well, people are just going to keep breaking it. But I did not think about a motorized system at the time.
You had the under $100 3-roller
Yes.
background system with the plastic chains.
Yes.
Those things suck. Don't buy one if you're thinking about it.
Not a
No.
good investment.
It's not. They break, and it's real easy for them to pop off
Yes, that's
the
what
gears.
kept happening.
And the chains, if you turn them the wrong way, they pop apart. And then it's hard to put them back in. You have to have them just a certain way to go in.
And no one prepares you to be an educator as a studio owner, because then you have to still educate. This is how you take care of things in a way that's respectful, in a way that is going to be received well. But that too, because like you mentioned earlier, some people come in not knowing anything. They've never even used a paper backdrop roll, and to be able to come in and show and give that labor of love is beautiful as a studio owner. But as a photographer, it can also be a little difficult, because you're thinking, well, everybody knows this. Sometimes we think that everybody knows how to do this, and then you meet somebody and you're like, oh, at one point I had to learn to do that too.
Yeah. I had a girl come in one time. She booked the studio, and she came in, and this is before we had any constant lights, and we were a strobe only studio. And her camera was a point and shoot. So no hot shoe. So I ended up loaning her my camera, showed her how to use it, to do her shoot. And she said she was saving to buy a better camera. And she booked 3 more shoots and used my camera each time.
Wow.
And then on the 5th shoot, when she came back, she was so happy. She had hers.
That's awesome.
And after using mine, she knew how to use hers.
I love that.
That was pretty cool.
Wow. And that's such a beautiful investment of your time too, because you didn't have to do that, but
As
that
a
was
studio owner,
incredibly
you do.
kind. Wow.
Yeah, I end up doing a lot of teaching. And I'm sure you did too.
Have you ever just taught, not when people rent, but just to teach a class?
Yes, I've done a lot of classes before.
That's
Yeah.
so beneficial, because no one teaches you how to do lights. And for people who are kinesthetic learners, getting hands-on is not an option if you're looking on YouTube and saying, well, what do I want to invest in? So I do love that in the studio you have literally every kind of light that I've ever even seen, that you have it available, and that people are able to use those lights.
Well, we've been around a long time. I've just acquired a lot of stuff. And some of them, like the RGB lights, I never can remember how to change the color on them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's one dial, but I don't remember which dial it is. And plus the studio is fairly dark. Or it is when I'm in there trying to adjust the light.
Yeah.
I've got to move it and get it where I can see the back of it and say, okay, here's the button we need to push.
Oh, wow. I've never shot with the RGBs, but I've seen what people do, and it is phenomenal, the images they come up with. Beautiful.
They can be interesting. Personally, I'm a people shooter, and I like normal skin tones. I'll see stuff that other people have done and think that's cool, knowing that I'm not going to do it myself. I'm too old school. I think skin tones ought to be skin color and not blue or green or whatever.
Yeah. I suppose whenever you're editing, if you're a stickler on when you zoom in on the computer and you're seeing everything and you're like, oh, you can tell that the light's hitting and it's starting to alter what like shooting in hospitals, for example, it's very difficult because you have that yellow light coming from the ceiling in a hospital, and you zoom in on a fresh 48 newborn photo with the mom, and you're like, what is that orange cast? And you have to go in and edit that out, or you could choose to leave it because it is, it's where it was taken. But for me, I'll be like, I'll have to edit that out because, like you mentioned, skin tones are skin tones. But the creative aspect that people are able to do at the studio with those RGBs is awesome.
Oh, they do some cool stuff. I just don't ever use them, so I can't remember which button's what.
Yeah.
I can tell you when you come in, set your camera to ISO 100, 5.6, shutter speed of 160. And then I'm going to turn the lights to between 1/8 and 1/4 power. And that will give you a proper exposure, 9 times out of 10. And
Are you here whenever people rent the studio?
myself or
Like
somebody is.
That's amazing. And that's so helpful. Like you mentioned, the woman the camera wasn't able to she wasn't able to use her camera. That would have been detrimental to her shoot and her business. Arriving at a studio and not having any type of guidance and then going in with your client.
Well, there's a lot in the studio. And when somebody first comes in, it's not a walk-in, there's a couch and 2 chairs and 3 plants. Studio. It's all the equipment, all different lights, the backgrounds, everything else. So how do you turn all that on? How do you, where's the overhead light switches? Mm-hmm. You'd have to look for it all. And where's the triggers hanging out? So after somebody has shot there 2 or 3 times, then they can come and go as they please when they demonstrate that they are familiar with everything.
Yes. Yes.
And so, it's a different studio than a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And
but like you mentioned, remember the previous podcast, it didn't go through. But David mentioned an asset of shooting in the studio is being able to control everything. And so having that aspect of control and how beneficial it is, when people come in, I had a natural light studio, and there would be times where people would book the natural light studio and it'd be storming. And a studio is a studio. That's good that you're indoors, but it's not good if you came here for the beautiful sun rays coming through those 10-foot windows and they're not there.
right.
And so David showed me an amazing LED wall that he had, and I had never seen one in person. I've seen a couple of pictures taken with one, but not one in person. And it was just phenomenal to see that rain or snow, storm or shine.
I don't think there's another one in Texas. I know Max Slaughter has one in Arkansas because he saw ours and said, do you care if I build one like it? I said, no, knock yourself out. Here's what all I used and where I got it and how I did it. And so he built him one.
Wow. Well, and it's movable too. Is his movable?
Yes.
Wow.
Disadvantage to it, it's 8 foot by 8 foot. So it won't go through the doors.
That's very true. I did that when that's a good memory that I just remembered. I built a movable wall inside of the studio. Mm-hmm. And then when I went to go move to a new studio, I couldn't take it with me. I mean, of course, undoing it, but I thought I was just going to be able to, I don't know what I was thinking actually, but I was like, I'll just be able to wheel it out, and then it did not work that way. But it was a good thought.
It was. And I knew when I built this one that I was going to have to if I ever wanted to move it, I would have to take it apart.
Yeah.
And I may come up with a way to rebuild it to where it folds in half. I've had thoughts along that line.
That'd be awesome.
And then I could just roll it out, pop it back up.
See, you mentioned earlier that you wasn't creative, but I think that that's a pretty creative idea.
I'm real creative in all things except photography. I mean, we've got a fairly creative set here. We got the RGB lights on the wall, and then the big light up there is one I built. And, I'm using wall mount stands,
Yes.
light stands for camera stands, mounted off the ceiling. I don't like stuff on the floor.
Ah, but that's smart. And even these are mounted. I didn't even
Yes.
notice that. And it's not, the tripping hazard with things on the floor and with such expensive equipment. It's smart to have everything mounted.
Well, when you're old, tripping hazards become a big hazard. I break easily now.
Oh no. Well, we come in this earth fragile and we leave the earth fragile.
Yes. So, you had 2 studios, Lynn, 2 locations.
Yes. Yes. So the first one was in the 100-year-old Big Blue Bank. It was a bank, and after a while, now present day, they turn it into just different office spaces. So the middle of the pandemic, nobody was really renting spaces, but I had this big idea that I wanted to have a studio space. And so I went and toured around, and I saw that space and acquired it. And I stayed there for, I believe, a year. And then once the elevator situation kind of got old and just the desire to have it on a ground level because people are lugging in equipment
Right.
and props and stuff, I began to look for another space. And one day I was leaving the current studio, the Big Blue Bank, downtown Wichita Falls, and I was driving on Scott Street, which is like one of the streets where everybody has a Scott Street in their city. It's the main street, runs for forever. And someone ran a stop sign and hit me. And they totaled out my car, and it spun around lots of times, and it landed up on the curb. And it was this close to a brick wall. And after getting out of the car, once they hit me, of course, like you're like, oh, my neck and everything's hurting. But I look up, and there's a building across the street from where they hit me, and it had these gorgeous, ceiling to floor windows. And I'm like, those are some nice windows. And I'm looking at it after the car accident, and the people come out the building, and they're like, oh my goodness, we saw the whole thing. And they come and help. But all I could see was that I've never seen this office before, this building. And after I was well and everything, I went back, and it had a little sign in it, and it said for lease. And I said, well, let me call and just see. And that's how I found my next studio space, is what seemed like a horrible incident with the car. I saw those windows because I had wanted something like that. The building that I was in just had, your regular windows.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I saw that and I was like, that would look amazing. That like how your light wall looks, I just thought curtains and a backlit image, because I mainly shot maternity. And I love those backlit images where it's like you can see just the belly and the mom's silhouette. And so I saw that, and a few months later, ended up getting the space and moved in, and completely, it was all green. They called it the green room because it was a lawyer's office. And he's like, it's the money room, it's the green room. That's where he makes all his deals. And so green carpet, green walls. And again, a mom with 3 kids going in and completely painting and taking up green carpet and green walls to transform it into an all-white studio.
But at least you did not have the carpet glue issues as the old building.
Yes, I didn't have the carpet glue issues. The old building had some black glue. First I thought it was mold. And I was like, what is this stuff? And she's like, oh, that's just the glue. It had some black glue underneath the rug, and the padding as well that was under there, and that was very difficult to pull up. The things you get into as a studio owner, you're like, well, one day I was a photographer, the next day I'm a carpenter,
Right.
and the next day I'm a painter. You wear all the
All
hats.
the hats.
Yes.
All the hats. Yes, the space we're in, I've worn every hat known to man.
Oh, wow.
And
You see, no one prepares you for that.
no,
Very
and
different.
it's too expensive to pay somebody to do it.
It is. I was going to look at a painter to paint the floors. So there were concrete floors. It's like, I'll paint them all white. And the amount per square footage. Now, if you're a painter and you're watching, we honor how hard you work. But I painted it myself because I thought, oh no, I can't pay that much per square foot just to have it painted. I went ahead and figured out how to do that myself too.
Now, did you actually paint it with paint?
I painted it with porch and patio paint, which
Okay.
I liked a lot better because there was one time I tried to go cheap. What's the fancy word you use for cheap?
Parsimonious.
I tried to be parsimonious and paint it with regular, like 5-gallon thing of paint and one shoe
Peeled right
print.
off.
Well, one shoe print, and it was like you could see underneath it. Gratefully, I had already painted it white with the porch and patio, but I thought I'll just touch up these areas after Christmas. Is a lot of foot traffic in a certain spot of the studio. I tried to do that, and I used flat paint at that. That was horrible. And I said, never again. I can't go that cheap.
A tip. Stain the concrete or epoxy.
See, the epoxy, I don't feel like I was skilled enough for, but I would have went that route. I looked into it. And I think I even saw you telling other photographers on the Facebook group. I think I've seen your comments before letting them know because everybody wanted the white floors, but then they didn't know how to keep up with them. I ended up just repainting every 3 months. But the epoxy would have been better because you could easily just go and take up a footprint because
Yes.
it's so glossy versus a flat or satin paint. It's always going to be hard to scrub those off.
You didn't think you were skilled enough to do epoxy?
The YouTube videos
The only
made
way
it
you can get
look.
skilled is by doing it.
Remember, David, the children. It was very hard.
Handcuffs are inexpensive,
That's very true.
you know. And you could have handcuffed them over in the corner. And
And in that second studio space, so the first one I had 3 different rooms. The second one, I only had 1 room, and then I expanded over the years to 3 rooms. So I only had that 1 room. So there was that disadvantage of there's no little office for you all to hang
Right.
out in. But the epoxy definitely would have been a better route for longevity reasons. So that way I
YouTube
didn't have to
videos,
keep- they have them out there.
I'm old. And I grew up in an age where we did not have YouTube. And my older sister would take on anything. She's moved houses
Oh, wow.
and rebuilt houses basically from the ground up. You know, she had no schooling on doing that. She just jumped in feet first and did it. You know, she learned better ways to do things. But, and I've got a good friend, if there's a YouTube video on it, she'll do it. She'll tackle anything. Yeah, she's,
That's a good tip for in the future because I've thought about being here. I've thought about opening another studio, but I've just been waiting on the right timing and been doing other projects. But I love the ability to be able to just design a space that people can then use. And so I may just tuck that, in the back of my head. And if I watch the videos now, and thankfully, once you invest in the equipment like the scrapers and the paint rollers, you just have those. And so I kept all the tools because tools, what I learned from having garage sales is that people like tools. They would always come saying, you have any tools? I said, I have kids' clothes. No, tools. And then whenever I got, and that was before I opened a studio, but whenever I got into the studio industry, I was like, I see why those older guys were looking for tools. Because when you go to the tool store, when you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, those tools will get you. You'll be like, oh, I'm going to spend about $100 on wood. And then when you don't have the right saw or you don't have the correct drill, then you're like, this $100 turned into $500.
Exactly. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so you closed the studio this year.
Yes.
And you got married a year ago?
Yes. Got married a year ago. We actually got married inside of the studio in Wichita Falls. So we eloped and had a small intimate wedding at the studio. And that was special to me. It was very special to me because it was a place that I created before marriage. And it was a real big part of me. It was a lot of what I did. And so being married there, and then whenever I moved here last November, we kept the studio and just managed it remotely until this September. So about a year after we got married, we decided it's a lot to manage from 2 hours away. So we closed the studio.
Tell us how you met your husband.
Oh, this is a good story. So I met my husband online by way of Instagram. And so we were actually... we actually met online on Instagram, but before that, I was doing some live streaming. So just like I am now, just talking on the camera, my daughter comes in and she was not feeling good. I could just look at her and tell that she was not good, almost like there was something keeping her from breathing right, something in her throat. And so I just brought her over to sit on my lap during the live stream, and I prayed over her, and I just said, whatever is in her body, it needs to come out. And sure enough, a few moments later, she just began to projectile vomit. And that video went viral. It had over 1 million views just like that. And people were just sharing it. And he ended up seeing the video and then messaging me and saying, hey, how is your daughter? And I let him know that she's doing fine now. And then we just began to talk from there.
Oh, cool. Oh, excuse me, folks. But, so y'all met online, basically.
Yes.
And then you moved to Texas. Or not, you were in Texas. You moved to the DFW area.
Mm-hmm. So we met online, and I was still living in Wichita Falls. And then I ended up traveling here for a connection that I met at the studio. She was doing a TV show airing, and so she was having like, this is one of our episodes that we're filming for the TV show. Will you come be in the audience? So I came up to DFW area to do that, and I let him know, like, hey, I'm coming into town if you would like to meet. And so we came, and we met at Cheddar's, and we had our first day at Cheddar's, and that lasted about 9 hours long, and we just talked the entire time. And it was after that moment that we both actually went back to our homes and we said, they're the one. Like, just like that. We had been talking in March of last year. And it was May that the end of May that I went to go and do the television show. What's it called? I went to go sit in the audience and everything. And so at the end of May, we finally was like, oh, we met, and that was our first time meeting in person, and we had that 9-hour-long date.
Cool. That's cool.
Yes, it was beautiful, beautiful time. And after that, we got married 4 months later. 4 months later.
Awesome.
Yes.
So, and what's his name?
Joshua.
Joshua.
Yes.
It's a lot of Joshuas these days.
Hey, it's a good name to have. And he is the most supportive husband, even when we kept the studio, because we got married and I kept the studio for, about a year. And anytime anything broke, anytime I needed to just go down there and check on things and set up designs and change some sets around, he drives me anytime I need to go to Wichita. He's like, okay, whatever we need to do, and he'll drive me there, and I'll go and do everything. And then he found his favorite cookie shop in Wichita Falls that he will go and get his favorite iced cookies, and I'll just do all the creative things, and then he'll come back to the studio and bring the kids cookies and help me finish moving furniture.
So you got a chauffeur and a babysitter?
He's an amazing helper, you know. We're supposed to be our partner's helper, and so he helps with everything, and I'm so grateful.
Oh, cool. Well, folks, Stephanie, how do people get hold of you?
They can find me
I said Stephanie, Courtney.
Hey, it's okay. I was like, we're just going to keep rolling. You can find me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Arise Daughters CO. And I teach people women, how to arise up and find their purpose in life. And so Arise Daughters CO on Instagram or on YouTube, same handle, Arise Daughters CO.
Spell it for everybody.
ARISEDAUGHTER CO.
Okay.
Arise Daughters.
Folks, y'all look Courtney up. At least say hi to her. And is that where they find the viral video?
Yes, you'll find the viral video there of my daughter. And, oh my goodness, the moment that, and you know, you get what you pray for, because the moment that I prayed for that, she threw up everything, but I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't prepared. And vomit and I do not go along very well. I don't know who does, but for me, I'm very queasy. And so you'll see that video on there, and it literally brought in so many amazing women to say, wow, like, I'm going to start praying whenever my children are sick, but you better be prepared if you do that.
Yeah, God works in mysterious ways.
Yes. I'm so thankful for you having me on your podcast.
Oh, I've enjoyed every moment of it.
It's been a lovely time.
Folks, until next week or next time, come back and see us.
Yes.
That was